YouTube. This is Shin from Team Behemoth, and I present to you my deck profile for the Performage Gem-knight Utopia deck that you have seen in the YGOPro replays video I posted some months ago. I apologize for the delay, however I had things to do with my life and I could not post videos for these passing months. However, I will make it up to you because most likely, if all goes well, I will be able to post videos once per week from now on. Now, without further ado, let's move on to the deck profile. What we run first for the monsters is 3 Performage Trick Clown. This card is very amazing and most likely the core of the deck. Since Performage Damage Juggler got banned, we have no choice but to run 3 of this because it's amazing. When it's sent to the graveyard, you can target any Performage monster in your graveyard, including himself, special summon it, and its attack and defense becomes 0. Then you take a 1000 damage. But the key here is you can send him from anywhere to the graveyard, even as a cost, and he will trigger spell summoning himself. Our whole monster lineup is an engine of rank 4 monsters to be able to summon our Xyz monsters like our Utopias in order to draw cards with Xyz change tactics, which we are gonna explain later on. Now, moving on, we have Hat Tricker. This guy is mainly here because if you have a Trick Clown on the field, you can special summon him. You don't use the guy for anything else. We just use him for rank 4. The Performage counter effect is irrelevant for this deck, so I will not bother explaining it. Now we have 3 Heroic Challenger, Assault Halberd. This guy is very amazing in this deck for some very important reason. 1. He's 1800. 2. The main reason, he can be specially summoned from your hand if your opponent controls a monster and you control no monsters, enabling for rank 4 plays. And another important effect, 3, if it deals battle damage to your opponents, this guy can search any heroic card from your deck to your hand, including himself. Therefore, we don't need to run any other heroic cards because we can just search himself. And he deals piercing damage, which is sometimes important, and it's mainly important to use his effect. Now, 2 Summoner Monk. This guy is here only to summon rank 4s. The whole monster lineup is here to summon rank 4s. We run a ton of spell cards in this deck in order to summon rank 4s. Therefore, this guy is here to summon our Utopias and draw cards, like we always do. 2 Gem-knight Garnet. This guy is here for the Brilliant Fusion, because you can play Brilliant Fusion unless you play Gem-knight, and this is the Gem-knight of choice in this case because it's level 4 and has the highest attack of all the Gem-knights we have encountered. So this guy is just here for the Brilliant Fusion, and once you Brilliant Fusion, you can summon him with Dygast or Emerald, which I'm gonna explain a bit later once we go to the extra deck. Moving on, we have Goblinberg. This guy is here over any other special summonable guy that special summons level 4s because this guy is searchable by reinforcement of the army. It's very important for this guy to be searchable because we need consistency in this deck in order for it to work, because it's based on one combo that gives us a ton of cards. Now, moving on with Kage to Kage. I have debated taking this guy out, but however, the deck didn't work as well without him, so I kept him in. This guy, when you normal summon any monster, you can special summon him from your hand. The monster has to be level 4, but all the monsters we run are level 4, so we have no problems about that. The problem with the card is that you cannot normal summon or set it, so if you draw only that guy, you will have big problems. That's why we only run 2, and we only run him as a last monster. We may actually be able to replace it with something else like Tin Goldfish. However, his effect has actually been useful to me, so I kept him in. The last monster's practically a preference. I prefer Kage to Kage over anything else. You guys can experiment with the deck and put your own choices in there. So don't let me stop you from putting effort into this deck as much as I have. So let's move on to the spell lineup. 3 Brilliant Fusion starts us off. This card is simply amazing in a lot of decks. Most of you already know what this thing does. You can fusion summon any Gem-knight fusion monster using materials from your deck. And you send them to the graveyard, of course, as fusion materials. So Trick Clown triggers because we summon Seraphinite with it, which needs one Gem-knight monster and one light monster. And Performage Trick Clown is a light monster, so you get a free monster, a fusion monster that lets you normal summon an extra time, and plenty of Utopias for it. So this card is simply amazing in this deck and could not work without it, trust me. Now, we have to move on to the Generation Force. This card adds any card with Xyz in its card name from your deck to your hand as long as you control an Xyz monster, which is gonna be so easy with this deck. Special Summoning Utopia is way too easy in this deck, therefore Generation Force is there for the consistency because it searches our other key card, which I'm gonna talk about in a second. It also searches a trap that I'm gonna talk about in a second as well. Now, we have rank up magic Astral Force. The only reason I run this is to summon Utopia Beyond and Utopic Dragon. However, it's not that useful of a card overall. You can take it out to make extra deck space to remove Beyond and the rest in order for you to fit the Xyz that you like. This is mostly a fun choice, but I really like the card, so I put it in. And it was fun playing it. It saved me a lot of times. So yeah, I'm glad I actually added this card in the deck. Now, Reinforcement of the Army searches out your heroic guys, searches out your goblin bugs, helps out your Xyz plays. Consistency is never a bad thing, therefore this card is there. Now, moving on to one of the key cards of the deck, and the deck revolves around this card a lot, therefore that's why we're on Generation Force. Xyz Change Tactics. This card is simply amazing. When a Utopia monster is Xyz summoned to your side of the field, you can pay 500 life points and you draw a card. Of course, this effect is not limited to once per turn, therefore the more Utopias you Xyz summon, and don't forget rank caps or Xyz summons on top of Xyz summons are treated as Xyz summons, so you can draw a lot of cards out of this. One Utopia, mind you, is 3 cards from your deck because you summon 2 of them on top of each other. So yeah, this card gives us insane draw power, and it's a main combo piece for the deck to make the combo plays first turn and plus a lot and draw your key traps in order to lock your opponent out of the game. Now, moving on with the Twin Twisters. Why do we run Twin Twisters? This card is amazing with Trick Clown simply because we have a lot of dead cards anyway a lot of the time, and Twin Twister helps us kill that card and destroy 2 spells and trap cards on the field. His main use is against Monarchs because the field spell is so insane that we cannot do anything once it's out. Therefore, Twin Twister is our route to that field spell, so we don't get wrecked and when being locked out of our extra deck, and we have to gain access to it. So Twin Twister is there, and 3 of them to boot. So it also helps with back row decks, and it also helps with Burning Abyss sometimes when they set the Solemns. A lot of decks now play the Solemn, so yeah, even if you don't have 2 cards on the field, it's very useful to use this card since Trick Clown and a lot of dead cards, and we plus anyway, so this card is amazing in the deck. And we have Raigeki up next. This card is amazing simply because it's an out to cards like Majesty's and Vanity's Fiend, and it empties the board for OTK and for damage plays. So this is amazing. Next up we have 2 instant fusions. This card is here to summon Norden, nothing more, nothing less. We have to make rank 4 plays with this deck, and instant fusion helps a lot with that. Moving on with Foolish Burial. This card is simply to get rid of the Trick Clown and spell summon him to the field for free. Well, we take 1000 damage, but that's simply irrelevant because we have a rank 4 when we can begin our plays, but be careful about this deck. It pays a lot of life points, so you have to be careful of how you manage your life points. If you're not careful, you may actually lose the game because of it. So I recommend you when trying to test the deck to keep in mind your life points. Always keep track of your life points if you want to play this deck. Now, we have to move on to the last cards of the deck that wrap the lineup before moving to the extra deck. Now, we have Xyz Block. Why do you play this card? It's so bad. No, it's not when you have Generation Force. You can search out this card, and this card negates any monster effect by detaching one Xyz material from an Xyz monster we control. So why is this card so amazing? It's because it's searchable with Generation Force. Extra Generation Forces don't help you, and Exchange Tactics do not stack. Therefore, simply because you can only control one of them. So what do you search with the rest of them? Xyz Block, a card that blocks your opponent's plays. It's really important for this deck because Generation Force is an amazing card with it, and it saved me so many times. And since this deck is like Infinity, a lot like Infinity actually, you need to search your counter traps, and this is a searchable counter trap, which is simply amazing in this deck. We of course run Solemn Warning because it's our 1 out to Denko Seka, which is very annoying when it actually hits the field, because we cannot use our traps and your opponent can make plays, which is something you don't really want to do. Now, the only drawback of this card is the life points, which is very important. This deck actually pays a ton of life points, as I said before, and warning hurts a bit, but we have to run it to actually keep your opponent from doing things, because that's how the deck operates. We have next Solemn Strike. This card is simply amazing. That's why it's so expensive right now. You pay 1500 life and you get a summon or activation of a monster. So yeah, effect monster, you simply wreck them with this card. When a monster with your spell summon or an effect is activated, you pay 15. It's done. It negates pendulum summons, which is its main use, as well as warning. Warning does that as well. So yeah, this card is simply amazing for the deck, and I recommend you run it, even though you have to pay life for it. You have to be careful about the life, but you need those cards to survive the game state currently, because the metagame is kind of fast. Burning Abyss is kind of fast. I mean, Monarchs are slow, but if they lock you out of your extra deck, you will have some problems. Therefore, you will run Notice to mitigate those problems as much as possible. And Bottomless Trap Hole, it is the only free way to get over pendulum summons. So we have to run this. Now, we're done with the main deck, and we're moving on to the extra deck. We have Gem-knight Utopia. This card is simply amazing with Brilliant Fusion because now we can summon this thing. Well, our main reason is because it needs a Gem-knight in the light so we can discard the Trick Clown, but it has an effect that allows you to normal summon an additional time. So you know what that means. That means more Utopias and more drawing cards, and if you get the combo right, you will have 2 lightnings on the field along with a billion cards in hand and set cards. So this thing is amazing once you do your combo. This thing starts your combo very explosively. That's why it's so key to open Brilliant Fusion sometimes in order to make more Utopias and just get the field going. Now, Norden is here for the instant fusion. You can special summon a level 4 or lower from your graveyard once you fusion summon the thing, or special summon it by any way. So yeah, Norden is here because rank 4s, nothing else. Castel is our next XYZ monster. It outs a lot of things. Maybe some floodgates that prevents us from doing things. Maybe some monsters that are very annoying. This card is very good. You know it's good. It bounces a card to the deck once you detach 2 materials. Also, it's a masterstroke if you detach 1 material, but we almost never use that effect. Anyway, this card is very amazing overall. We move on to Heartland Reiko to steal games from our opponents. This is our card of choice because we have face-up spell cards, namely Xyz Change Tactics. And once we have that, they cannot target Heartland Reiko for attacks. So yeah, it's an amazing card overall, as all the cards in this deck. I consider all the cards in this deck amazing because I've played it so much. This deck is so fun to play. I recommend you try playing it. Once you see this deck profile, you will have the fun of a lifetime. Now, this card, what does it do? Once you control a face-up spell card, this card cannot be targeted for attacks, and once per turn you can detach one XYZ material from this card. It can attack directly, but other monsters you control cannot attack this turn. So, moving on to Diamond Dark Wolf in order to remove some annoying back row that we need to remove once we have our Utopias out. So this card is simply here to pop itself and something else. It's quite a nice out to many things, like the Monarch Field spell. Actually, it's not out to a Monarch Field spell because it's an extra deck monster. However, it can destroy things like Mark of the Monarch, Return of the Monarchs, and a lot of back row things, and monsters that annoy you a lot. So this card is very, very useful for this deck. And we move on to one of the most useful cards in this deck. The rest of the choices like Heartland Draco, Castell, and Direwolf are kinda situational. However, Daigasto Emerald is very important for this deck for a lot of reasons. One, it spells someone's Garnet back from the grave, which is an effect I used a lot of the time because I like to have a field set up, and it helps with Utopias. And two, it recycles your Utopia engine once it dies. So if they kill one Utopia, you can just go ahead and Emerald them back to the extra deck in order for you to use the cards. Also, it makes Brilliant Fusion not so dead because you can return a Garnet and just have instant Brilliant Fusion live again. Now we move to the core of the deck, the Utopia monsters. They are so amazing. Now we move on first to the super big boss, Utopic Dragon. It's a 4K, 2K, rank 10 Xyz monster. You can also Xyz summon this card by discarding one rank up magic spell card and using a Utopia monster you control as Xyz material. This being rank up magic Astral Force. Now, once per turn, you can target one number monster in your graveyard. Spell summon it in defense position, so you can spell summon back your Utopia to actually make the draws happen. And its effects are negated, which is irrelevant because you can Xyz summon Utopia Ray and Utopia Lightning on it and just draw cards, which is why you actually play Utopia. We never play Utopia for its effect to negate attacks, which we're going to talk about later. So, during either player's turn, when a monster effect is activated that targets this face-up card, you can detach one Xyz material from this card, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. This card is insane to negate effects, as you all saw. Actually, as you all heard from me saying that effect, this is simply amazing. It helps you a lot. Negating effects is very important in this metagame, in any metagame actually. So this card is quite amazing if you actually get it out. It saved me once against an agent player, not an agent player, counter fairy player that is simply had the counter traps down. However, he did not have a way to negate my attacks. He didn't run Mirror Force, he only ran counter traps to lock his opponent out of draw cards. So I just attacked him with it and just killed him with the 4K Beat Stick of Doom. Now, moving on to Beyond. This card is simply amazing. This card is also summoned by the rank up magic Astral Force. So this card gets upgraded from Utopia, as you all know. And once you Xyz summon this card, the attack of all monsters your opponent currently controls becomes 0. So it's a great out to a lot of things, and it's 3000 damage for free if you attack. So the second effect is really interesting. Okay, now, once per turn, during either player's turn, you can detach one Xyz material from this card. Then target one face-up Xyz monster you control, and one Utopia monster in your graveyard. Banish the first target, and if you do, spell summon the second target from your graveyard. Then gain 1250 LP. So 1250 LP for free, pretty much. And it summons your Utopia back, so you can redraw your things, which is very, very amazing. This deck gets low on life points pretty fast, and if you use this guy's effect, it makes some traps live. It may make your Solemn Strike live. It may make your Solemn Warning live. It may make your Exchange Tactics buck live. It may make your Instant Fusion live. So this card is simply awesome. And if you summon it, you actually have a lot of advantage over your opponent, because now you can recover your life and your opponent's monsters are at 0, so you can push for damage or for game. Now we move on to the super important part of the extra deck. This is the core of our extra deck. This is not situational anymore. You need these monsters in order to operate. Now, so the important monsters of this deck are the 2 fusions and the monsters I'm gonna mention after Beyond. There we go. 2 lightning. This card is simply amazing by XC summoning it on top of a rank 4 Utopia monster without a rank cap magic. This build is not based on rank cap magics as you saw. It's based on exchange tactics and free draws from the rank caps that are free. So we don't lose advantage, we gain advantage from the exchange tactics with the free pluses. Now, Utopia the Lightning is a simply amazing card. He's the hero of our deck. What does he do? I assume you all know what he does, but I am gonna try to read him anyway. You can also summon this card by using a rank 4 Utopia monster you control as Xyz material. That monster also become Xyz materials to this card, so all the Xyz materials that Utopia has become lightnings. If this card battles, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects until the end of the damage step. This is very important against things like Cosmo Dark Destroyer, Cosmo Dark Planet. This card gets over any Cosmos ship without them being able to activate its effect to summon another ship. So that's so important. And this thing even gets over Dark Planet, so it's simply amazing. Once it attacks, you cannot do anything, so it's Enermitis. And if this card battles, while this card has a Utopia Xyz monster as an Xyz material, you can detach 2 Xyz material from this card. This card's attack becomes 5,000 during that damage calculation only. So this card is an out to everything. You don't need anything else to get to out your opponent's monsters. You have Lightning, which is simply super amazing, because now you have an out to everything in this meta. If a Monarch summons something super big, you can destroy their field spell and summon the Lightning to out it. And of course, we have the Cosmo monsters, which is super important to run them over. Burning Abyss are gonna be a kind of a problem unless you have your combo set up from the first turn. However, once you set up your combo, it's gonna be no problem killing Dantes and everything else with Lightning, so they don't get their effects. The only problematic card in Burning Abyss is the Beatrice, but you have Lightning for that. You have Xyz block and all the cards to negate its effect if they want to ditch Farfa, and therefore your Lightning is super amazing against that card because it can run it over without activating any Burning Abyss effects. Now, moving on to Utopia 1 and Utopia Ray. They basically serve the same purpose. They have different effects. One of them, of course, both of them can be Xyz summoned on top of a Utopia, rank 4. Actually, on top of a number 39 Utopia, the basic Utopia, not any rank 4 Utopia like Lightning does. And of course they have different effects. One, get your life points to 10 and destroys all special summon monsters your opponent controls. And if it does, you banish them and inflict 300 damage to your opponent for each card banished. Now the other one is simply, if you have 1000 or less life, which is quite easy to do with this deck actually, you can detach an Xyz material from this card. This card gains 500 attack, and one monster your opponent controls loses 1000 attack. And it's not limited to once per turn. So yeah, you can inflict some pretty big damage if you're low on life, which this deck does too easily actually. That's why we have the traps to protect us. Actually, by using the traps also lowers our life points, so we have to be careful about how we use the traps. The deck is pretty much how do you use the traps you have? How do you use the resources? You have to be very careful of using these resources in order to play the deck. Now, we have our basic Utopia, of course. It needs 2 level 4 monsters. It's what we exceed summon 90% of the time. So the effect is when any monster declares an attack, even your monster, you can detach one Xyz material from this card, negate the attack, and when this card is targeted for an attack while it has no Xyz materials, you destroy it. But we don't care about that effect because we almost never summon Utopia just to leave it on the field. We have to rank him up to Utopia Ray and then to Utopia the Lightning, while Xyz Change Tactics is on the field to draw cards, because each time a Utopia monster is Xyz summoned, you draw a card. So you draw 1, 2, 3 cards each time you Xyz summon 1 Utopia. So 2 level 4s equal 3 cards from your deck, which is very amazing. Now, how the deck basically works. All you need to do is rank, like, summon Utopia and rank him up. So, Trick Clown is used to special summon, any of those monsters used to special summon. So, all you need is Xyz Change Tactics and a way to Xyz summon Utopia in order to get your combo going. However, another important card, you can draw into it, but opening it is even better along with Xyz Tactics, is Brilliant Fusion. If you draw this card, use it right away to get a free monster, which is Trick Clown, and a free normal summon, so it's an extra Utopia. Therefore, if you draw this card, you draw even more cards out of it. And you have a second Lightning. So, our basic field first end must be like, if you get the combo right, 2 Lightnings and a bunch of set counter traps. So, your opponent cannot do anything about it because you have your counter traps to stop anything they do. And the Lightnings just get over the monsters that are very annoying, like Yang Zings, like Burning Abyss things, like Cosmo Dark Destroyer, if you could not out that. So yeah, we have a lot of things we can get over with Lightning. So Lightning is such good of a card. Many people run it now, and why not base a deck around it? This deck is simply amazing, as you have actually figured out with the combo. So you summon 2 Lightnings out, you set your cards, and you're set to go. It's like Infinity. You summon your things, and you set your trap cards. Your opponent cannot do anything next turn, and you just push for damage next turn. So that's what you do. You want to get the first turn with this deck most of the time, but even if we get second and somehow we'll get locked out of the extra deck, for example, if we're playing Monarchs, or if we get floodgated somehow, this is the out. Twin Twister. So, as for side deck, this deck can adjust to any metagame you really wish to do. Like, because you can play any floodgate you want. Once you do your combo, it's way easier to draw this specific floodgates you side game 2 and 3. So, if you don't want to run the counter traps because you actually reduce your life, if you're on the final, if the time ran out and you're in rounds, you want to do something else, you can remove the counter traps and add specific floodgates for the specific matchup. For example, Mask of Restrict from Monarchs. Once you play Mask of the Restrict in this deck, you will draw it too easily because of the Xyz Change Tactics. Any floodgate you play, you will be able to draw with Xyz Change Tactics, so that's very important. Also, we have Anti-Spell Fragrance for Pendulum decks. So if you want to play Anti-Spell Fragrance, you can draw it out. You can draw Vanish's Emptiness. You can draw any card you really wish to draw. You can also side one Gorgon or play it in the extra deck in order to protect your Floodgate once you have your Utopia out and you drew the Floodgate. So very nice combos in this deck to actually protect your Floodgate cards. Therefore, I do recommend siding a lot of important floodgates. For example, Imperial Iron Wolf for Cosmo decks, Anti-Spell Fragrance for Pendulum decks, like Mask of Restrict for Monarchs, and any meta can be adjusted with this deck anyway. So it's very amazing. Be creative with your side deck. Run the floodgates because they're simply amazing in this deck, and have fun playing this deck. This was Bahamut Sin, and I'm signing out.